Hi, everybody. How are you? You're almost there. It's week 7 of 8, and you've worked really hard. And in the middle of that, you went to intensives. And throughout this, you've been doing your abstinence project, which I know for many, if not most of you, that is a challenging experience. So I appreciate all your efforts this summer. I wanted to do this brief video for several reasons. One is that I'm not sure where to start. One, I'll start where I was debating. One is that you have a project or a paper coming up, a prevention plan. And I want to make sure that you're really clear on that before you get too far along with it. A prevention plan is not about relapse prevention for an individual. And this is in the assignment, but you have to be thinking, kind of have your mind in the right set to do the project correctly. A prevention plan is about primary prevention. So there's primary, secondary, and tertiary prevention. Your text in chapter, must be chapter 16, talks about prevention. Yeah, substance abuse prevention programs across the lifespan. So read chapter 16, make sure you read that and notice the differences between primary, secondary, and tertiary prevention plans. Your plan needs to be a primary prevention plan. So this means it's a plan to prevent some sort of addictive behavior in the community or a subset of the community for those who don't have a substance or addictive problem. So primary prevention is before there's any sign of problem, and it's for the wide open public. Secondary prevention is for those who have signs of concerns, like potential, like high risk groups. And that kind of programming is secondary prevention. And tertiary prevention is actually treatment. I don't know why we call it prevention, but we do. And so I want you to know that the primary prevention program is the one that you're going to be creating and using. It can be confused sometimes with relapse prevention, which is helping an individual prevent relapse, which relapse is actually seen often as a natural part of recovery, that a person often falls back, gets back up, makes progress again. Think about the stages of change and returning to the contemplation stage. Even from maintenance, people can fall off and return to contemplation. Do I really want this recovery? And then you help them move into action again. That is relapse prevention. So 2 different things, and so I want to make sure that you know that. So if you read chapter 16, and you will have an idea. And many of you had DARE program training in your elementary or middle school experience, and that is primary prevention. Everybody gets it. Nobody's evaluating, do you need this? We're saying that our entire culture needs this education. So that's what you need to be thinking about when you're creating your program. Took a little pause there. So the second piece that I want to share with you is really about our focus for this week, which is comorbid or co-occurring disorders. So I think I wrote this in your module, and I think it's important to know that you have the special opportunity to be capable and very strong asset in wherever you work. If you work in the clinical mental health setting, this is referring to those in the clinical mental health setting, you have special ability to be a great asset to your employer or in your private practice, as you will be trained to work both with mental health concerns and addiction concerns. So I think I said in the module, you know, remember, this doesn't make you an addiction counselor. There's more training to be had to really, this is an introduction to it. Most states have certification, and those of you who are in a certification program in your states, good for you. And those of you who haven't considered it, you might want to consider it. It really will strengthen your career to have this background, even if you don't specialize in addictions throughout your career. It's a great way to get started. You're really a desired commodity if you have the ability to work with addictions and mental health concerns. And those of you in the school counseling program, obviously this last module I spoke mostly about clinical mental health work because we're talking about treatment, the last two modules. But the next module will be a lot of what happens in the schools, and also as you think about groups that happens in the schools related to addiction. And the kinds of groups that you may run in schools may include things like children of alcoholics. Well, I don't know if we call it that anymore, but maybe children of troubled families. You're going to have to get a better name, obviously. But children of addicts. There are specific dynamics that children growing up in chaotic families with addiction experience, and having a support group for that can be really, really helpful. Additionally, you may offer a relapse prevention group, which is referring to what I said earlier, for those who in high school, for those who may go to treatment and come back to school. This is hard reentry, to come back to school where the norm possibly the norm for the student who has been in treatment was their social group were the users, and now they come back to school, and how are they going to stay clean? It's not that easy. So a recovery or relapse prevention group can be really powerful. I used to run one in Scottsdale High School in Arizona, and we met at 7 a.m. before school started, and the kids came weekly. They really, really appreciated this time to get together, talk about what was going on and how they were going to cope and keep each other, help keep themselves healthy. And obviously then next week I'll talk about more, but you would do prevention programming for your students, and there are plans or prevention programming that you can purchase, and many schools do, and then there are those and you could also create your own. So there is one thing I wanted to share for everyone that I think is very helpful, and one of you, right now my mind is blanking, but one of you told me that you use this already in your work, and that's this book, Seeking Safety. It's by Lisa Najavitz. It's listed in your module this week. It's a treatment manual for PTSD and substance abuse. So this is an example of both co-occurring, a treatment model for co-occurring disorders or comorbid. I prefer the co-occurring, but you know, now it's comorbid these days. And also it's a great example of group intervention. So both of those things we were read about this week. So the reason that this book is amazing, and I think all of you would benefit from having it, is that it includes some really very important preliminary information about how to work with trauma. The first piece always in working with any kind of trauma, and as I wrote in your module, most women who come to addiction treatment, whether outpatient or inpatient, have experienced trauma, and a large number of men as well. trauma is really highly correlated with addiction. Because if you think about addiction as a way of coping, as a way of, it begins as a way of coping, as a way of dealing with the overwhelm that a person feels, then the development of the addiction, which could be more physiological over time, then you can see how this can turn into a co-occurring disorder. So a trauma happens, I drink or I use pot to help myself cope with these horrible feelings that won't go away, or the dreams, flashbacks. And then that becomes a physiological addiction, as well as a psycho-emotional addiction. It's what I turn to, a behavioral addiction. Then this kind of treatment model is very helpful. So you have to start, when there's trauma involved, you have to start with, how do you help a person stabilize before you do treatment? And so this book is amazing because it really goes deeply into that first stage, which is about developing a sense of safety. And Najat is not the first to elucidate this stage in recovery with trauma. Others, like even all the way back to Freudian time, there was discussion of that. And then also, it's escaping me. Wasn't ready to talk about this. Other authors, anyway, I guess that's all I'll be able to give you, in the 70s began talking about the importance of stages in trauma recovery. The first, building safety. So it's building safety in the individual, and it's building safety in the relationship, whether that is an individual relationship or a group counseling relationship. So we do that by helping them develop and practice coping skills, to especially grounding. And so this book has this great section on grounding, or they're calling it detaching from emotional pain. So as when you experience trauma, as it rises as trauma, you might have a flashback or even just recollection, not a full flashback. It can be emotionally overwhelming, and grounding helps. Grounding is the idea of bringing us back into this present moment. And we do that in a variety of ways. So they outline many options. Also, they give you language to help teach your clients. It's really, really lovely. So they outline that grounding could be mental, physical, or soothing. And so, for example, a mental grounding is to identify 5 objects in the room. So I see a painting, a door, a computer, books, and a plant up there. I think that was 5. If not, I also see a book. So I'm identifying, so I'm bringing myself back into the room. Also, a physical one is using our senses to help ground us. And one that's really helpful, my clients always have appreciated, is the physical touch. So that might be rubbing hands on your pants. Now, what's the texture? Describe to yourself. So I would say I feel softness, kind of slick. And then rubbing your hands on the couch or the chair that you're sitting in, and what is that texture? Possibly, rubbing your shirt, your arms. What is that texture, and what does that feel like? And so you begin to describe those things for yourself, or your client might describe those to you as you're doing it in session. And then soothing grounding is the way of bringing loving kindness and compassion to yourself. So you might picture a loving person who either was in your life or someone that you don't know personally but would find to be very soothing. Picture them speaking to you or sitting with you or holding your hand as you're going through a tough time. maybe even saying a coping statement like, I'm okay right where I am right now. I can handle this. So I wanted you to know that this book can be helpful for all of you. I have never run an entire group, a Seeking Safety group, but it's outlined in here. I have been to Najavitsa's training, and the training was long and pretty slow, but her book is amazing. So I think it would be really worth it for you to check this out. So I think that is, where's my little note here? Yeah, those are the two things I really wanted to make sure to tell you, is that about the prevention program that you plan that you need to develop is primary prevention. So read that chapter in your text. And then also to remind you about seeking safety and groups and co-occurring disorders. So thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next week. We'll be wrapping up.